Let's take a look at how to make Bob Beck's electronic pulsar. The pharmaceuticals industry is one of the biggest money-making operations in the world. It may come as a shock to you, but they don't want to cure people. Instead, they want people to go on buying expensive medication at heavily inflated prices. Long-term health treatments are their ideal situation, as that provides them with a continuous revenue stream. Several people have come up with very effective cures for cancer and other serious illnesses, and those people have received the same unjustifiable, outrageous treatment as do the inventors of free energy devices. The pharmaceutical industry is well aware of the highly beneficial effects of colloidal silver, but they will never produce any, as they can't patent it and charge highly inflated prices for it. Consequently, they're not interested, as their only objective is to make money, and definitely not to cure people. The late Bob Beck emphasized this in his video lecture, which may still be available at the YouTube link shown here. Here is an excerpt from that lecture. For the last 5 years, he says, I have spent my own money with no government or university funding investigating a thing which is the most remarkable thing for all diseases that I have ever heard of personally, and I have been in this field for 40 years now. I have a stack of IRB studies, PCR laboratory reports from major hospitals around the United States, and until these are peer-reviewed and published, I am not supposed to show them to anyone who is not a medical doctor, because of patient confidentiality. Now, many of you have read that there is no cure for AIDS. That is an absolute lie. There has been a perfectly workable 95% accurate cure for HIV and cancer and herpes and hepatitis and Epstein-Barr and about a dozen other incurable diseases, which was invented on March the 11th, 1990 at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York City by Drs. Kelly and Wymans. And what happened to this breakthrough, which is far more important than penicillin, antibiotics, anything you can name? It has been suppressed. And why has this information been withheld from you? Information which you can easily prove for yourself. Don't take my word here for anything. Check it out. I found recently that the mafia owns about 51% of major pharmaceutical houses, as well as working the other side of the track with the illegal drugs from South and Central America and China. The medical cartels in America will charge you from $50,000 to $200,000 if you have terminal cancer, and this is for surgery and chemotherapy and radiation and hospital care. Consider a packet of Wrigley Spearmint chewing gum. That packet of chewing gum cost me 5 cents when I was a young man, and I paid $1.32 for that packet at the Chicago airport recently. $1 for the gum plus 32 cents for taxes and handling. The price of that package of chewing gum is every cent that it takes to cure, and I'm not supposed to use the word cure, as only a doctor can do that, most of the known diseases in America today. Now, why haven't you heard about this? Because General Electric, Westinghouse, and the other companies have billions of dollars tied up in X-ray machines, CAT scanners, and MRIs, which are leased to health organizations. And for $1.32 you can cure yourself without doctors, without pharmaceuticals, without medicines, certainly without surgery, certainly without chemotherapy, without any drugs, without any herbs, any homeopathy remedies. You can do it for yourself, and it has been done. People keep asking, why haven't I heard about this? Why are there no hospital studies? There are hundreds of hospital studies. Here's one test result. At this date, the 11th of August 1998, this patient had only about 3,063 particles of HIV in his blood. But now, as this test develops, the PCR on the 3rd of November 1998, which is several months later, the count was less than 1 in 100, which means that the test result was 0 as far as this test was concerned. We have a stack of these reports, a foot and a half deep, where every one of these full-blown AIDS patients, every one, even though some of them were on life support systems or needed attendants to lift them from the bed, these people are symptom-free now. Every single one of them is back at work. Not one of them has the symptoms of AIDS. So if you read in your newspaper, the proceeds of the basketball game on Saturday will be donated to a search for a cure for AIDS, that is an absolute lie. There is, and has been, a cure for AIDS, all AIDS, a cure for about 95% of cancer, 100% cure for Epstein-Barr, hepatitis, lupus, about a 50% cure for herpes, and I've been funding these out of my own pocket. I have absolutely nothing whatsoever for sale. God has been exceedingly good to me. I think that I'm going about my Father's business here, and I'm paying for it myself, and I'm giving it to the world. There is a free paper available entitled Take Back Your Power. A web download link for this is www.freeenergyinfo.com/beck BECK.pdf. You do not need doctors, nurses, chiropractors, herbs, pharmaceuticals, or surgery. Only if you're going along with the politically correct solutions do you need these things that your neighbors have been depending on for all these many generations. There was a paper entitled Blood Electrification and Immune System Restoration with Microcurrents, a proven, startling, rapid, inexpensive, and safe discovery for positive, controllable remissions. How we found that this information had been suppressed. The doctors who discovered this, and let me tell you about the discovery, in 1990 they put a couple of small platinum wires into a petri dish that contained highly infected human blood, and the infection there was a very, very strong dose of HIV, which was supposedly the cause of AIDS. They found that when they had electrified this blood, the HIV could no longer attach to any receptor sites in the blood. That means that the healthy cells could not be infected by the HIV. The only mention of this incredible discovery was in Science News, March the 30th, 1991, page 207, entitled Shocking Treatment Proposed for AIDS. And it tells about how these two doctors had given a paper on this process, saying, the experiments described on March the 14th at Washington, D.C., at the first International Symposium on Combination Therapies, showed that the shocked viruses lost the ability to make an enzyme crucial for their reproduction and could no longer cause the white cells to clump together, which is the true signs of viral infection. The only papers which I was able to find that got into the American press were Science News and an article in Longevity News electrocuting the AIDS virus. But what happened in the longevity article, which was December 1992, page 14, was that Dr. Colley said it will be 15 years before this process is ready for human experimentation. We have been doing it sub rosa with patient consent for over 5 years here, and we have the test results to prove it. When I was lecturing to a room of about 800 people, an 80-year-old man came up and said, "Bob, I was sent home. My cancer had metastasized all through my system. I was told to go home and make my will, as I had, at the most, about 2 or 3 weeks to live. I went home and I made my will, and I saw your article in some magazine, and I did it. I am now free of all cancer. My biopsies are clean. My CAT scans are clean. I went back to work, and being an attorney, I had to work 16 hours per day to catch up on all the work I had missed while I was in intensive care. Now I'm jogging 3 miles per day." We have had women who have had lupus for about 10 years, barely able to make it from the couch in front of the television to the bedroom. They are back in the malls now, spending their money, walking around, and able to hold jobs full time. Do any of you know Linda Wright? She brought in a clean blood test one day and said, "My doctor had to send this to 2 different labs. He's never seen a person with clean blood after that person had lupus." We have dozens of these people, and not one of these people went to the doctor for the cure, except for the people who are on this institutional review board study at a hospital in Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, California. Bob says, "My blood pressure when I started this averaged 219/190 and was borderline diabetic with blood sugar 425 to 475. Today my blood pressure is 130 to 140 over 70 to 75, and after just 3 weeks my blood sugar had dropped to 150, which at that time was considered normal." Bob Beck's PDF document is attached to the end of this document. It is perfectly possible to make one of his pulsar units. I've done that. He has had more than one design, and the design shown here is his latest solid-state version. And while it looks complicated, it really isn't. Here is his circuit, which can be built on a small piece of strip board, often called Vero board. This is the circuit here. It's very simple. You're using 3 small 9-volt batteries to power it. They're PP3 type batteries. There's an on-off switch which is mounted on a small plastic box which contains the circuit board and the batteries, and attached also to that plastic box is the output 3.5mm socket. There is also attached to it a variable resistor which allows you to adjust the level of the treatment. On the board there are only 11 items. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarter-watt resistors, very small, very cheap. There is a 100 nanofarad capacitor. There is also a 22 microfarad capacitor, and there's a light emitting diode. There are 2 Zener diodes. The Zener diodes and the light emitting diode are just indicators. They're not essential to the operation at all. And then there is 1 integrated circuit. This is very straightforward. It's not difficult to build, and it's not difficult to understand. This is the circuit diagram here. You've got the 3 batteries feeding 2 identical resistors, which gives you a tap voltage which is half the voltage of the batteries. That is fed to the integrated circuit itself. The integrated circuit is a very nice one. It's called the LM358. It's very high performance. very forgiving in voltage levels and extremely powerful. There's two high gain comparator circuits in it, and it is also very cheap. The output from that is fed to a variable resistor to allow you to adjust the level. There's at least 820 ohms between the integrated circuit and the output socket, and the output socket then gets passed to two electrodes which you attach to your wrists. The way that the plug-in circuit operates is when you push the plug into the socket, it pops the number 2 connector up and insulates the number 1 connector from it, but gets the connection through to the plug, and then the number 3 connector, which is the socket surround at the entrance to the socket, is then connected to the pins 4 and 5 of the plug itself. The plug has only got two outer pins, pin 4 and pin 5. When the plug is not inserted into the socket, pin 1 connects to pin 2 and pin 3 is not connected to anything. When the plug is inserted, then pin 1 is isolated, pin 2 is connected to the plug pin 4, and pin 3 is connected to the plug pin 5. The Beck circuit is connected to the output socket like this. You have the output coming to the variable resistor through a minimum value resistor onto the output socket, and the other connection then, while the plug is not inserted, feeds the light emitting diode through a resistor. Light emitting diode is a rather clever version on this board. It is a 2-color LED, and if the voltage is applied in one direction, you get a red light. If the voltage is applied in the other direction, you get a green light. This is the LM358 integrated circuit, and those are the actual connections of the package itself. It's a very slick, very cheap, and very versatile integrated circuit. Just to see how it's operating, you have it feeding through to the circuitry itself, which is one of the comparators inside the chip, which feeds on to the second comparator inside the chip, which just passes it straight on out to the feed to the socket. The output from the first amplifier, or should I say comparator, inside the integrated circuit is on pin 1, and it can supply a large amount of current if a large current is ever needed. That output goes straight to one of the jack socket connections. When the oscillator circuitry is connected, the first amplifier causes the voltage on pin to go low. Then the output on pin 7 inverts it, and so it goes to plus 25.5 volts. You'll notice that while the overall voltage of 25.5 volts is applied again to the jack socket, the polarity is now reversed, achieving what the relay version circuit does, although 1.5 volts is lost in the process. This is a neat solution, and the voltage applied to the electrodes attached to your wrists is just around 50 or 51 volts of alternating stepped voltage. It's a very neat system and gives you a very large voltage range from such small operation batteries. The power supply feeding it is 27 volts. The output is plus 25 volts to minus 25 volts. It's a neat operation. If for any reason you can't get a 2-color LED, you can use two ordinary LEDs, one connected in that direction, the other connected in the reverse direction, with a limiting resistor in That means that before you plug the plug into the socket, these two light emitting diodes will flash alternatively, because the voltage being applied to them between pin 7 and pin 6 is alternating between plus 25 volts and minus 25 volts. The system is quite simple. This is a plug-in board layout that can be used if you want to test it out before actually physically building it on a little strip that can be in a small box attached to your wrist. I should mention that where capacitors are involved, you can use any capacitor with the same capacitance and a higher voltage. For instance, if you have got a capacitor which is 2.2 microfarads and it's rated for 10 volts, that means that the capacitor will quite happily manage voltages up to 10 volts. If you happen to already have a 2.2 microfarad capacitor which is rated to 16 volts, that just means that the voltage on your particular version can go higher. Not that it will, but it could do. So you can put in the higher rated voltage capacitor if you wish. You can buy another one, of course, but you don't have to. The 4.7 resistor shown here in green and the two LEDs shown there in your test plug-in board circuitry are not essential. They're only there for testing the circuit while it's being ready for construction onto a strip board. Bob's PDF document follows immediately on in this, and he has something like 50 pages of text there for you, but I leave you to read that on your own. You don't need me to read it for you.